Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest episode of Cispheil. As you know, Cispheil is our renowned basketball series where we speak to intercounty Gaelic football players, intercounty senior hurlers, intercounty ladies football players, and intercounty camogie players to look at the crossover between the Gaelic games and basketball, how basketball played a big part of their development as some of the top Gaelic athletes in the country, its relevance into the modern game, and how it has a lasting impact in their lives, and how they follow the NBA or basketball in terms of some of their leading lights, and how it gave them inspiration in their own careers. I'm delighted today to be joined by two renowned stars, one renowned star and one up-and-coming renowned star. My guests this evening are Ciaran Lyng, a Wexford footballer, all-star nominated Wexford footballer, played international rules for Ireland, played in the 2008 All-Ireland semi-final when Wexford got there, was played in the Leinster final against Dublin, lost out to Tyrone in that All-Ireland semi-final. Renowned free taker, one of the most top scorers for Wexford intercounty football in terms of his free-taking ability, has played cross-level, has played professional soccer, has played with Preston, Shrewsbury, was wanted by Arsenal by a child, one of the best renowned free-takers with Wexford throughout the years, with the likes of Ben Brosnan shouldering the line up front for Wexford.
It's a good ball, down first, Ciaran Lyng, to his right is PJ Banville. Is there a goal on here? Here's Lyng, goal for Wexford! It's what they needed, it's what they've got, and Wexford are back in the All-Ireland semi-final.
My second guest is a renowned up-and-coming star for Clare in terms of intercounty football. In the last 2 years was on the UL Signerson's Team of the Year, centre-forward for UL, alongside a team that had David Clifford, caught the leading lights, represented Clare in the Munster minor final in 2018 at midfield, was one of the star picks of that intercounty season, but also played in All-Ireland quarter-final, was centre-forward for the Clare under-20s, and burst onto the intercounty scene in the last 2 years as well, and has been one of the most prominent scorers for Clare in terms of Division 2 and the All-Ireland series as well, Emmet McMahon.
The Munster side then made a decisive move when they netted the game's first goal. Emmet McMahon showed brilliant composure to create the shooting chance, with Clare now 1-3 to 5 points ahead.
So I'm going to start off with Ciaran, I suppose. Ciaran, for you, I suppose, when we look back, Wexford football was in a really good spot in the early 2000s, in 2005, 2006, 2007, 8, some real prominent stars in the place where probably Clare football has been in the last few years as such. And growing up, at that time when you were playing in Leinster finals, when you were playing in semi-finals, did you see maybe a crossover even back then to how basketball, I know in the modern times now it's become increasingly involved in terms of Gaelic football, but did you even see back in the early 2000s playing inter-county football, that the overlap between Gaelic football and basketball?
I think, hi James and Emmet, good to be on first of all. And yeah, everyone in Wexford would probably rather be in Emmet's shoes. I would anyway, competing in the top level rather than down the doldrums in Division 4 like we are. But we would have had, it wouldn't have been massively discussed, say, in a team level and in team meetings or anything like that. But individuals within the squad who would have watched basketball, like you mentioned, Ben, he'd be a big fan of it as well. Graham Malloy, a couple of the guys, we would have talked about it ourselves. It would have been more of a social thing back then. I think as time went on and the tactics in football and strategy became so important around defensive structure and getting players back, and it really became like transition defense, and it became very basketball, like teams taking turns attacking each other. And that sort of brought more basketball into it. I know Dublin had a basketball coach. We had the great Timmy McCarthy downtown. Timmy, he was in with us for a year. Legend in with Wexford, and Timmy wasn't well there for a while. I hope he's keeping well now. And he brought just a total different element to it. The discussions around how we moved the ball and I think it was still in its infancy at that stage. I don't know if everyone had fully accepted or bought into it. Like, people in GA can be, a little bit slower to adapt to things, especially from other sports. Normally, soccer being the case in point, even though Gaelic football seems to be turning into some sort of soccer basketball hybrid now. So yeah, I think now it is becoming more discussed, but back then it was kind of more individual to us.
Mm. And I suppose if I can come to you, Emmet, on that sort of point, you're sort of new to the scene in terms of intercounty football, in terms of working with Colm Collins the last sort of 2 years, in terms of preparation for all different types of teams. And you would have come up against some sort of teams like Derry in the last 1 or 2 years, competing in Division 2 and competing in Croke Park, who are formidable in terms of how they operate that basketball zone defense and how you need to penetrate that and how you need to break that down. And you're coming up against systems now as an intercounty forward in terms of trying to, and obviously funnel back from a half forward position as well when you're playing some elite teams like Kerry as well. Do you notice a crossover in terms of the sort of coaching, in terms of basketball, in terms of trying to unlock these teams, and one sense when you're attacking and then trying to sort of funnel back and provide the buffer zone and the outer zones, dare I say?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can see, as you mentioned there, you've your Derrys and you've your Monaghan's. I think Derry this year and for the past 2 or 3 years have been kind of the main point in case in terms of their basketball, like structure, you know. Like for Derry, like all their players attack, all their players defend. It's up and down, no matter if you've 2 in your back, no matter if you've 15 in your back, they go up and down. And look, yeah, of course it's tough as an intercounty forward, kind of when you're up against these fit, strong, athletic athletes that just won't stop running, especially like them Ulster teams, you know. But as I said, like similar enough to basketball, it's all about trying to find pockets of space, hoping that the defenders are going to ball watch at some stage, and then that's your opportunity to pounce. So like it was seen this year in the All Ireland Championship. I think it was Ulster as well. I think Derry nearly whooped Monaghan in Ulster just because they had that kind of rootlessness in terms of going up and down, no matter what number they had in the pitch, and it was very basketball like. Just 15 up, 15 down, protecting the zone, breaking at speed, all that kind of stuff, a very counter-attacking style. And then I think Monaghan then changed it up, and then in the All-Ireland Championship and actually drew with them. So it was nearly like picking horses for courses, because they knew Derry, like so Derry is probably the main team that's kind of most similar in terms of basketball, and we've played them now a couple of times, and twice in the league now in 2 or 3 years, and twice in championship as well, so 4 times. So we're well acquainted to them. I don't think we haven't got a win yet, but they're thankfully in Division 1. But they're Monaghan changed it up and they kind of handle it a little bit better. So it's nearly all about horses for courses, and Derry are one of the top teams, and it's tough to break down for sure.
I suppose if I can come to you, Ciaran, I suppose we all know the famous Lyng family in Wexford, your brother Diarmuid as well, a renowned intercounty star, renowned intercounty hurler as well. Growing up in a family that was steeped in terms of sport, obviously you from a young age were destined to big things in terms of soccer as well. Did you always play basketball around at home? Was there always an influence at home? Was there always a love for American sports and especially basketball? Did yourself and Diarmuid, did you stay up late nights and have a few sort of late sleep-ins watching some basketball, NBA?
Yeah, my dad actually played. That was my first encounter with him. I was like 9 or 10. I remember finding a picture of him. I still have the picture of him lined out with his team in Ross playing basketball. I think it was Waterford team they're representing, and I didn't even realize he'd played. But like anyone, you'd throw it around in the schoolyard and probably not know the rules fully, and a slightly rougher version of basketball. But yeah, we would have spent plenty of time shooting around with the ball. I think like stayed up for a couple of late NBA finals with my dad when we were young. Kizzy never really got into it that much. Not massively into the American sports. I'd follow the football a good bit and a good bit of the basketball as well. So yeah, there'll be lots of late nights now, especially for the finals. some of the Golden State and Cleveland series, even Miami's 2 titles, all of those along nearly all LeBron dominated finals and Steph Curry. Got to stay up and watch loads of those late and turn up very tired for work the next morning.
Yeah, and I suppose if I can come to you, Emmet, I suppose I know your family and I know your family background. I know your father played rugby at a very high level, but I know also that your mother played senior internationals women as a basketball for Ireland. She was captain a number of times for the Irish women's basketball team. So there's, I suppose, in terms of your father has played rugby at a high level for, and your mother has played basketball at a high level. Was it really that mother's sort of influence in terms of you growing up, in terms of that basketball, in terms of instilling those sort of skills that you cross over in terms of football? Is that where the love of basketball came for you? Was it really from your mother?
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been for sure. Yeah, my mom's originally from Kerry, so she's kind of, I know Kerry are kind of still well into their basketball, in fairness. So it would have been. No, I tried out both the rugby and the basketball, and basketball was that warmer, and it was inside. It was less tough on the body. So yeah, no, I enjoyed that. No, in fairness, it was a lot of influence from the parents, but it's important. I know Ciaran will probably agree with it. It's important when you're young lad to try out different sports. You're working on your teamwork skills, your communication, all that kind of stuff of working in a team. And there's a lot of crossover in terms of different skills. You've like vision and communication skills are in every sport, So, yeah, I would have kept up with basketball. I'd say 2 or 3 years anyway. Sure, Jim, you would have been my coach anyway for a while. So, no, it was good. I much preferred it now that it's in the rugby. I'd say my father wasn't too happy with that, but I'd say he knew I couldn't do anything in the rugby. So, no, it would have been mostly from my mother. I've seen a few trophies at home. I said I better take up this and see how I am at it. So, no, I really enjoy it now, and I can see a nice bit of crossover too into Gaelic games today and Gaelic football.
And I suppose you're the latest, I suppose, in terms of intercounty footballers now in a sort of a new sort of generation. How important do you think, I suppose, with all the demands that are on young athletes and young performers now in terms of playing intercounty underage and under 20 squads and colleges and all that sort of stuff, to try and keep that diverse background in terms of try and play as many sports as long as you can until you're 19 and 20. Don't sort of pigeonhole yourself so young in terms of people saying to you like, oh, you're going to be the next Tony Kelly, you're going to be the next Brian Fenton, you're going to be this type of person, and in terms of that you should 16, that you should dedicate all your craft to that and forget playing other sorts of sports. I know you played soccer as well for a good level, until Clare took off for you in terms of that. But how important do you think it is for youngsters to not really fall into that trap and maybe to think, right, coaches are telling me 15, 16, I'm going to be the next big thing and I'm going to pack away these other 1 or 2 sports and just go at this now? Because in many cases, all it takes is one bad injury and then you're left on the dust, really, and you've sacrificed other things that you've liked really at a young age.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital. In fairness, like you should, it's very unfair on teenagers in terms of dropout rates from different kind of sports. Like I suppose there's so much demands the way Gaelic football and I know all GA is going. There's so much of the small percentages that you're trying to achieve. So a lot of underage intercounty squads are really honing in on those now, and it's increasing the kind of the amount of time and the amount of dedication and commitment that you need to put in at that young age, and they might only be 15 or 16. So it's very, very hard to kind of balance that then with maybe a soccer or a basketball or a rugby or even a hurling, So like you can see now, a good few years ago there would have been dual players in hurling and football, and if you said that in today's game, you'd say you were talking to the wall. So there's absolutely no chance of it. But it's vital in terms of having different types of skills, playing as many sports as you can for as long as you can. And I know you mentioned the different requirements of kind of that older age group of 19, 20, 21, the amount of labour that's being put on their body in terms of you've club 21s, you've under 20, intercounty, you've college then as well. That becomes a real hectic schedule. And if you're trying to balance that, if you're at a young age of balancing it with an intercounty squad as well, senior, you're really in trouble. So it's about getting the balance really between doing as much as you can, trying to keep up as many sports, and obviously not getting burnt out, because there is a fear if you keep juggling maybe 3-4 sports up until 18, 19, there is a fear of burnout, like, because you could be going every day of the week, and even maybe twice on one night. But it's so important to keep up 3 or 4 sports at least until you're 16 or 17. You might at 17 or 18, you might have to narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3. But it's vital, as I said earlier, to kind of work with different players from different backgrounds, working on different skills, trying to see, can I learn anything from hurling that I can bring into football or basketball or whatever that may be. So it's vitally important that you keep that up, and hopefully you don't get caught in the middle and lose out on all of them, you know?
Yeah. And I suppose before we move on to the next part, I suppose, Ciaran, would that be something that you would testament to, even back in your time? I know you were a renowned sort of young soccer player, but if maybe you were put to a wall back to your pin of your collar back then, do you think it might have had a defect in your career in terms of, because probably the course that laid out for you probably worked out really, really, I know you would have liked the soccer career to gone further, but maybe in hindsight, the whole experience benefited you in terms of Gaelic intercounty football as well, being given that opportunities to trace that dream in terms of professional football.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the sentiment about playing as many games as you can, especially when you're younger. I think they should be just exposed. Kids should be exposed to as many games as they can. I think, like myself and Emmet, would have grown up in sporting households where you have brothers and sisters, especially when they're older than you. You've got a bit of a leg up when you play hurling and football, almost on most kids your age. So you're one of the good kids a lot of the time. That's what you'll find. And you should play games that you're not good at. You should learn how to play. Like playing basketball, I remember going into St. Peter's College when I started the first year and playing with guys who really liked basketball. And they would have been far less athletic than I was, but they'd school me at it because they knew the angles, they knew how to get layups, and I could be standing under the basket for 30 seconds trying to get the ball in. So it just, the skills that you learn from the different sports that you're not good at, that make you develop, that when you come back to playing hurling and football or soccer, whatever it may be, you've learned something else from that game. Like, I don't think there's a massive difference between a point guard and your playmaker in Gaelic football. If it's an 11, you're trying to get the player the ball the most, who's going to set up the play, whatever it is. There's no difference between those roles. You're carrying the ball forward, trying to pick passes and find holes in the defense. So yeah, as many expose kids to as many games as you can when they're younger. And then I think when I was 16, I had to choose with England knocking. I just decided that was what I was going to try and do. But overall, yeah, sure, you couldn't be disappointed with how it worked out. I grew up a lot in England and it set me up well for when I came back. I would have liked to play a couple of years hurling if I could have. But yeah, football was just quicker to pick up in relation to having played soccer for 4 years. So, and then we had such a good team and an enjoyable few years together. All of us would be good friends, and yeah, it's not something you'd change.
Okay, we're going to move on to part 2 now, and this sort of segment I'm going to talk about a person in terms of American NBA player who has the greatest influence in terms of your sort of sporting hero and why. And for Aidan O'Shea, it was Steph Curry. For Joe Sheridan, it was LeBron James. For Daniel Hughes, the down footballer, it was Michael Jordan. And for Kevin Walsh so far, it was Kevin McHale and Larry Bird of the Boston Celtics. I suppose, Emmet, from this generation, when you look on at all the current NBA players, and you probably have seen maybe one or two even in the past, maybe, who has probably the person you are most looked up to in terms of a role model from the NBA sort of basketballing world that maybe has had an influence on you?
Suppose I don't want to steal. I don't know who mentioned it already, but I'd probably say Steph Curry. In fairness,
they do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining.
I just suppose he's kind of similar enough to me in terms of the shooting on site a lot of the time, which is nearly my downfall at times, you know. So, like, I really admire him the way, like, I know you've probably seen a lot of videos of even all the subs bench when he's about to take a shot, that they know that he's practiced that shot hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of times, that he's nailed that shot so many times that even his teammates know that it's going only one place. And you'd have to admire that, in fairness, the amount of work that he's probably put in, just buckets all the time. And you can really kind of hone in on that in terms of Gaelic football as well, the amount of work he's put in, knowing that he can back himself at any stage of any game, and kind of a clutch player in terms of that. He's really kind of a role model in terms of just backing himself, having the confidence in his own ability to kind of nail whatever shot, saying, okay, I have a shot here, I've nailed this down at my, for us it might be at your home local GA pitch. So you can really kind of compared to that, say you've been down at your GA pitch, I've nailed this free hundreds and hundreds of times. So if you're up in Croke Park, that is no problem to you. So he's, when I was growing up and watching him in the odd game, I always kind of felt like he was a man that was really nearly my style in terms of that. So in terms of the shooting, so no, he's a really good player now. Really admired him.
I suppose that's prominent because we're speaking to two prominent free takers now, both guys who really like to take frees here. Ciaran, a recognised free taker, Emmet, a recognised free taker. Ciaran, the same sort of question for you. I suppose you're a bit older than Emmet. Are you going back a bit further, maybe to Kobe? Are you going back maybe a bit to Michael, Scotty? Are you going back to that era, or is it someone from the present era? Is it even LeBron or?
It's very difficult not to pick Michael Jordan for the shooting reasons. You know, even when I was playing soccer, that's where I would have really learned about him more, because even at that time, whatever it was, 2003, 2004, there was posters of him everywhere in all the gyms, everything. It was the quote, you know, I've missed 50,000 shots in my career. It's the one you don't miss. All of the famous things that he said, or just the Duncan poster, whatever it was, that his influence is so huge. But I have to go with LeBron.
Will throw in. Rashard Lewis playing off the ball. Lewis gets it to LeBron for three for the win. Yes! LeBron James at the buzzer as the Cavaliers have pulled it out to tie this.
I was in America, my brother's in Maryland when he was drafted in 2003, and I had just signed my professional contract in England. So I just the name, and himself and Carmelo being drafted together, there were two such unusual names that it just stuck with me. And yeah, I suppose it was like my career started at the same time, so I always watched his games. That's why I saw so much basketball over the years, is watching his games. He would have had a massive influence, more in his approach to it than anything. I mean, it's difficult at 18 or 16 when people are saying you're going to be this phenom or whatever they call it in America, that you still have to actually do it and live up to it and be that person. And he is that. And I think even though Michael is the greatest, I think you just love his approach to it. You know, even passing the ball at the end of the match, people criticize him for it and say that he passed the opportunity. And it's always the same argument. If he's being doubled, he'll pass the ball and it's an easier shot from somebody else. So I think that team approach is just something that you can take as a GA player, because you have so many players now back defending. Shots are so difficult to get off that you need to have that. You need to have the vision to pass the ball as well. You need to be able to lay the ball off to somebody, even if it's not as good a shooter as you, it's somebody with the time to settle, pick his target and put it over.
We'll move on now to part three, because time is catching up with us. And this is just one or two quick questions about the current NBA sort of landscape. And if I can come at you, Emmet, first, I suppose the Los Angeles Clippers with Cowie, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, the newly acquired James Harden. I suppose, how do you see that going down this year? There's so many different personalities, so many big sort of characters within that sort of team. Will they get the balance, the mix right? They're not going with a big man. Is there just too many different sort of pieces to fit together in a jigsaw to make it work? It seems that way anyway.
Yeah, it does seem that way, and I think you're on agree. It's often hard to kind of, when you have a lot of big names in there, it's a lot harder nearly if you have a lot smaller names, because you're trying to fit everyone in, mightn't be going in the right positions. As you said, they've just got James Harden. Like it'll be interesting to see if they can stop the big men like Jokic and Giannis and lads like them, you know. So it's a question. I don't know if they could be past their prime in terms of that, but yeah, it's going to be hard for them to kind of fit in all them big players, a lot of big characters. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a few clashes in the dressing room in terms of that as well. So yeah, no, it'll be interesting, but I reckon they could be past their prime, all right.
Yeah, and I suppose
George goes to work.
Ciaran, coming to you, I suppose the New York Knicks, one of the most longest suffering franchises in the NBA, and I suppose always looking for that elite star. You mentioned Carmelo, they hadn't had one since him really, in terms of that, which Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, I suppose a fan base, such a massive fan base that is crying out for successes. Is it going forwards or is it going backwards, or are the Knicks going to be always stuck in the doldrums looking on and envious of other teams?
No, I think insanity is going to be the peak of it. I don't think it's going to get any better. I follow Charles Barkley a good bit because he's hilarious. Some of the stuff he comes out with. But I saw he said it the other night at the Boston game that he's not having it. He's not seeing him as a contender. They may scrape into the playoffs. They may beat a team, but actually Karl Anthony Towns is one of the players linked to them this week. But that was what he was saying, that they need a really big player. And I think Julius Randle is good. He's very effective, but I think you need a few more around him. That's going to be like they beat Atlanta the other night, pretty good win. I don't know. I think Josh Hart as well. I don't know. I've never been sold on him. I didn't in LA anyway, and I don't think many people did. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't see New York being a contender anyway.
I suppose
much more to Randle. Randle shakes on Osman down the lane. He hammers it and gets fouled. Oh my. 28 points for Randle.
Emmet, the Orlando Magic, such an exciting young franchise, very, very young though, in its infancy, with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner coming off winning a world championship with Germany, Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz. I suppose for them, making a playoff would be probably seen as progress. They're a coming team, but it's going to take a good few years yet. Is that the assumption, that they're still very young compared to some of the other teams within the NBA in terms of experience? They might have the talent, but maybe not the experience that's needed yet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They could be a little bit too fresh, kind of too young. Inexperience could catch them, but like they could get it together. As you said, it would be progress just making a semi-final. Like when you're a young team like that, it's kind of hard to kind of get it together so early when you're playing more experienced lads, you know. But yeah, I'd agree with you on that, Jim. They're probably too fresh, too young. But it wouldn't be a surprise if they were to make the playoffs as well. So hope they do, because it would be great to see it, because they're so young and so fresh. But inexperience could catch them on the line against some of the bigger teams, you know.
Yeah, I suppose.
Oh, man.
Wagner just got himself a poster.
Yeah, man.
Grew up idolizing Dirk Nowitzki.
Ciaran, coming to you, I suppose, what a fantastic start for the Minnesota Timberwolves so far. Karl Anthony Towns regarded one as the best big men in the NBA, behind Jokic, behind Anthony Davis. But Anthony Edwards is breaking out this year. He's on a sensational form at the moment. And is this the year really that Minnesota can take the next step and maybe get to a conference final? Are they coming of age now? Is Anthony Edwards really taking this franchise and saying, yes, I'm going to be one of the leading lights of the NBA now?
Yeah, I do agree on Edwards. I think he's fantastic. I saw an image, I don't know, it was on Instagram or Twitter, of him next to Michael's face, half and half, and he just looks the spit of him. And I think he has that edge. I see him trash talking with LeBron the other night. And there was no backing down in him. I think he's made a huge difference to it. I don't know about Karl Anthony Towns. I know they've had a lot of changes there. Anytime I watch Minnesota, I'm not hugely impressed by him. I think he does his job well. and he's scoring better this year. But there was talk of him being traded at the beginning of the year. There's still talk about New York. So I think Rudy Gobert, like he dominates so well defensively that it's like having a big brother there. They're playing in a too big set, which is not going to work all the time. And I don't know. I don't see them being. I think they could reach a conference final. I think if everything went really well. But yeah, no, I don't see them challenging Milwaukee anyway.
Ant off the feed, and Anthony Edwards showing that Ants can kill.
Emmett, last question for you before I come back with Ciaran Slozer. I suppose we spoke about draft prospects, and Wemby was the big draft prospect this year. But back 2 years ago, Zion Williamson for the Pelicans was supposed to be the guy, the next LeBron James. Awful, terrible run with injuries, and probably it's dampened the expectations around Zion, but he seems to be fit this year now. It seems to be the best we've seen of Zion with CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram. They've three real bona fide superstars. Is this the time now where the Pelicans really need to make a push? Really, they've been waiting for Zion to get fit, and I suppose he's coming to age now where he's fully fit now, and I suppose Pelicans need to make a push. They've been stuck really in no man's land for the last 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, in fairness, Zion has been playing well. I actually watched highlights of a couple of his games there, right? Look, they could be a threat if they're. I think they'll be able to make a push if they're fully fit. Now that's a big question mark, and unfortunately, no one can kind of predict that. They could make a push definitely for the Western Conference semi-finals for sure. If they stay fully fit, I reckon they could, but we haven't really seen them much at full strength, as you said. So, yeah, on that, could make a push this year if they keep fully fit, but it doesn't seem that Zion has the luck in terms of injuries on his side either. So hopefully he stays with it, and if he keeps injury free along with all of his other teammates, they could most certainly make a push. In fairness, yeah.
Okay, and final.
He's got Zion. Look out.
Question for you, Ciaran, to finish this segment. I suppose Sacramento Kings were the major shock last year, finishing third in the Western Conference with Domantas Sabonis, probably the pickup of the year, really, in that trade move. In terms of the Kings robbed the Pacers blind, it seemed, in terms of putting them together with De'Aaron Fox. But it's going to be very hard for them to repeat that. It looks like it could be a one-season wonder what Kings did last year in terms of their high position in the regular season. Going to be very hard for them to back that up this year, one suspects.
Yeah, it's hard to understand how Larry Bird or the Pacers or how they didn't keep Sabonis. I mean, all the time, I know he was a hype player in Europe. They're saying he was Europe's greatest ever player, which was high praise for them. But yeah, you're starting to see it now, just how good he is at Sacramento. And I think having the Aaron Fox with him, or the Aaron Fox is very unusual first name. Yeah, I think they're quite dynamic. Looking at them, the way they link up, some of the pick and roll stuff out on the perimeter. I think, yeah, it just looks like it works. And they're a little bit of a buzz team at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what happens to them. Like, every team gets a little slump, especially the ones overachieving. And it'll just be interesting to see how deep they are. I don't know if 4 and 5, 6, 7 that are coming in. I don't know if they're as good as maybe what's around, especially teams like LA and the two LA teams assembling all-star casts and all-star benches, Golden State doing the same. You know, I don't think that the Kings have as deep a roster as those teams. But if they can keep everyone together, I think the same as what you're talking about with Zion, that's what I referenced with LeBron earlier, the expectation, and he had a Nike deal before he'd even scored in the NBA. I think sometimes, you know, if you just pick up an injury and it starts to escalate from there into another injury, it can get away from you very quickly. And yeah, hopefully the Kings aren't victims of those injuries either.
I suppose finally
2 years just develop their players.
4-point Sacramento lead. Oh, the hammer! That's Gonzaga on Gonzaga.
To wrap up, so far we've just one word answer here on this, guys, in terms of who you see. The Nuggets were champions last year. I suppose Aidan O'Shea thinks maybe that it's the time for the Celtics. Joe Sheridan thinks basically that the Suns now acquisitions could get him across the line. Daniel Hughes thinks it's very hard to look past the reigning champions, the Nuggets, and Kevin Walsh then feels that it could be the Celtics' turn again. I suppose, Emmet, in one word for you, who do you think is going to be last man standing coming the end of the year?
Well, I was gone away for the whole summer to Boston, so I'm going to have to go Boston Celtics. I'll stick with them.
Okay, there seems to be a popular sort of trend at the moment, the Celtics, after being somewhat ambushed by the Heat last year in terms of that. Ciaran, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Celtics.
Celtics.
I'd already picked the Celtics, but I didn't even know you were going to ask it. And I just think with Brown and Tatum, I think they have to come of age at some point, and all the Boston teams do. Remember with Rondo and with Pearson, the lads, when they did it. And I just think, yeah, they've got everyone behind them. Again, like the Heat, nobody's going to expect that from them again. And I think, yeah, I like to see Boston win it.
Yeah,
I think every Irish person likes Boston as well, don't they?
True. The Porzingis pickup could be the pickup of the year. But for that moment, for me, Jim Conlan, to our special guest this evening, Ciaran Lyng, renowned Wexford intercounty footballer, an all-star nominee, played international rules for Ireland as well in 2008 against Australia, played an All-Ireland football semi-final, played in a Leinster final as well. One of his most capped Wexford intercounty players, playmaking chief at centre forward. Thanks for joining us this evening. Then on to Emmet McMahon, last 2 or 3 years, breakout star for Clare footballers, cemented his place in the half forward line as well. UL Sigurdsson's centre forward, nominated in the Sigurdsson's team of the year at centre forward as well. Thanks for joining us this evening, Ciaran, Emmet, sharing your stories with us today. And that concludes this episode of Cispheil. For me, Jim Conlan, saying to you, stay safe, take care, and God bless. Cheers, lads. Take care.
All the best, Jim. Mind yourself, Emmet.
Cheers.